I'm so excited about how this game went. I think I'm just going to do this entire podcast standing up. This energy cannot be contained.
I watched the whole game standing up, so I think I have to sit down now.
Two. That was a nice move by Pipkins, taking it right to the rack himself. Wide open three, left wing. That was a nice move by Pipkins, taking it right to the rack himself. Wide open three, left wing, and it's good. Nylon, the dunk likes that, Matt.
A three from the right side, and it's good! The one, Pipkins, the man, yet again.
Hello and welcome to the Flex. I'm Matt St. Jean.
And this is Joe Howie.
It's a victory episode. Friars just defeated TCU 79-70 down in Fort Worth. First true road game of the season for Ed Cooley's squad, and they take it. This is a huge win for the Friars. Finished non-conference play at 4-2. Big East play starts this weekend. But I think the story of this one, it's two words. It's pretty simple. David Duke stole the show. 28 points for the second consecutive game. Joe, what are your initial thoughts?
First off, I'd like to congratulate myself for correctly predicting the score, although off by 1 point. I said that Providence would let up 70 points, and they did. I had them scoring 78 points. So 79, I mean, that's just one made free throw. If Noah Horkler didn't make the free throw, then we reached 78. So I'll take the credit there. But I think for me, obviously Dookie played a great game. That's back-to-back 28-point showings for him. But for me, I think the thing I liked most about this game was our rotation. I mean, we saw over the span of the first 4 or 5 games, we were playing nearly 11 guys each night. Today, Cooley cut it to 9. No Bryson Goodine and no, Chris Monroe. So I think, when you have those 4 guys that are playing roles off the bench with the one consistent being David Duke, who really doesn't come off the floor, I think we got into a really nice flow offensively and, more important, defensively tonight.
Yeah, I think the defense was a little bit iffy at times, but this is what you should get from this year's Friars team. You're going to have a couple guys in Duke and Watson who can light it up on offense. You're going to get bits and pieces from everybody else in the lineup to add on to that. They'll all be role players to work with them. And the defense this year is not going to be as good. It's not going to be as good as your typical Ed Cooley defense because you lost so many of the key guys for it. Watson's not as good as Khalif Young. AJ Reeves is not as good as Alpha Diallo. Jared Bynum is not as good as Lawan Pipkins or Malik White down as a defender. But what you did see is while they're going to give up some easy shots, and TCU shot the ball really well at points, you also forced a lot of turnovers, and they were able to get in transition today in the second half, which I thought was really big.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think actually looking at TCU, they actually overall had a better field goal percentage than the Friars. TCU shot 60% from the floor. The Friars only 52%. But I think one of the difference makers here too was the Friars defense was able to force some turnovers on the TCU end. TCU ended the game with 19 turnovers, and PC really took advantage. I mean, we got out in transition and we made great use of our bigs in the paint. Shout out to Ed Croswell. He only recorded 11 minutes, but put up 8 points. He was a huge force off the bench. Jimmy Nichols, who also came in, played a really solid role on defense, poking the ball away, getting a couple steals, and he also put up 8 points too. So, I think the story of the game was defense feeding offense and going from there.
Yeah, I think that's a huge one. 26 points off turnovers for the Friars. Only 12 for the Horned Frogs. Another stat that stood out to me, this is something we talked about pregame, how huge rebounding was going to be. Friars out-rebounded TCU 33-20 and had 18 offensive rebounds. 18. TCU had not been out-rebounded in a game yet this season, and Providence comes out and puts out a performance like that after what we've seen. You have to know Ed Cooley's really happy about that in the locker room.
Yeah, that was huge. I mean, I'll even use this from the Fairleigh Dickinson game, the first 27 minutes of that game compared to now. So that's a small difference, only a couple days. I think we've seen this team grow a lot. I'm really, really impressed with the rebounding improvement. The assists, we had 22 assists tonight, which, I think it was against Alabama. We didn't even break 5. So
yeah, we had 4 against Alabama.
Yeah, so I mean to see the growth that this team has gone through since the Maui Invitational is huge. I think now, 6 games in, they're starting to get a better feel for one another, and that's not to say that this team, oh, they're done growing. There's still going to be more growing pains, especially as you enter conference play next week, but I think from where we picked up, I'm going to say from Indiana to now, you can see a complete difference in this team.
And it's been only a week since the Alabama game, a really tough loss for the Friars. Gave up 88 points in that one. So a turnaround on defense for sure. This is a TCU team that was shorthanded, had 2 players out of their starting lineup tonight. But still, it's a good team, and you're going on the road, and you're playing as well as they did. I think this is one of those where the eye test, more so than anything else, shows you how much the Friars have improved. But I think we should take a look at the box score, because the thing that stands out to me, there's no bad stat lines. The only one that's questionable is Alan Breed. He's a freshman who put up zeros across the board in 13 minutes and was not a liability in any way. Every single other player contributed in at least one facet of the game. And when that happens, plus you've got Duke going for 28 points and Watson going for 18, you're going to be in good shape.
Yeah, Matt, I actually, there is a stat that I'm not too happy about. It's 6 for 13 from the free throw line. I mean, those are just
fair.
Those are free points. That takes this from a less than double digit game to a multi-digit difference. So I think right there, if you clean up the free throws, you're a little more comfortable in that final minute when TCU calls the timeout and they start doing jumping jacks on the baseline. They do all that stupid stuff that's like you're down 11, just let the clock run. But obviously, if you're a coach, you want to squeeze every last second out of the game. I understand that. But again, if PC makes their free throws, this is a much different ending to the game. A 9-point victory turns into, I think it's a 15-point victory. So again, that's just make your free throws.
And 3 of those misses are from David Duke. If it's 3 from Watson, I can be okay with that. Horkler goes 1 of 2. I can be okay with that. Duke, you definitely want to see him hit probably 3 out of those 4 free throw attempts to be happy with it, and that gets you over that 80-point mark. I want to say I'm gonna pick out a player here that has already gotten quite a bit of hate in Friartown. And I think a lot of people are going to look at this stat line and say he had a bad game, but I was happy with his performance. It's Jared Bynum. He only had 2 points. He only made 1 shot from the field. He missed 3 3-pointers, but 8 assists. He's now 7th in the Big East in assists per game. And, sorry, not 7 assists, 8 assists. Duke's right above him with 7. 8 assists for Bynum. And he didn't score. His only impact on this game was as a passer, and it was mostly just the second half. Despite that, still putting up a stat line like that, and the Friars still able to win. Bynum will have games where he scores 8 points, 10 points. He'll have games where he's able to shoot. So the fact that he can come in as your point guard and not have one of those games and still have that much of an impact, I think is pretty big.
Yeah, here's the thing with Jared Bynum is the 8 assists. I think that's great. I don't think that Ed Cooley's using him correctly in the offense because I'll be honest, for 25 to 30 minutes of that game, David Duke ran the point while Jared Bynum played the 2 for the time that he was on the court and wasn't in foul trouble in the first half. So when you have David Duke running the point and Jared Bynum at the 2, he's better off on the bench with Reeves or Gant or someone else in going big because he's not a good scorer. I mean, obviously he did work at St. Joe's, but Providence is not St. Joe's. And when your shooting percentage from 3-point territory is what it is this season, you cannot be playing Jared Bynum at the 2. Now, on the reverse side of this is that in his limited minutes, he put up 8 assists, and that's a great stat line. That's a Kyron Cartwright stat line. That is, I'm a true 1 and I'm a table setter kind of stat line. So if you play him at the 1 and you play Duke off the ball, Duke's going to score more than 28, and Jared's going to hit more than 8 assists. I get it. Duke is a playmaker, and he's the best player on the team. You want the ball in his hands. But logistically, you need to look at how you need to use Jared Bynum. Because if you're playing him at the 2, you might as well not play him.
Now, you mentioned another name in there I want to talk about, and that's A.J. Reeves. He had probably one of his worst games in a Friar uniform last time out, only played 12 minutes, took 5 shots from beyond the arc and missed them all. Today, only 7 points, but a much, much more in control performance and a much more well-rounded performance. He hit a 3, he hit 2 mid-range shots, and then you see 4 rebounds, 2 assists, 3 steals. He could do a little bit of everything.
Yeah, that's a well-rounded stat line for Reeves. I still want to see his scoring go up because I know he's capable of it. But when you look at the flow of the game, especially late in the game when Reeves wasn't really playing much, it was Bynum, Duke, I think it was Gant, Nichols, and Nate. And really, Reeves wasn't in because you wanted to put Jimmy in at the 4 and go for that longer defensive look, which is completely understandable. And I think right now that's my favorite lineup that Ed has unveiled. But again, to credit Reeves, this was a good bounce back game for him. He looked a little more confident stroking that 3-pointer that he made, and he got going inside the 3-point circle, which is huge for his confidence. You need to see the ball go through the net, especially for this kid, and it showed. I mean, he goes from, you said it, the worst performance in his Friar uniform to what was a very well-rounded line for him today.
Yeah, and I think when you have Duke and Watson playing at a level like that, you only need role players around them. And if you combine Reeves, Gant, Croswell, and Nichols, those 4 guys put up 30 points when you add it all up. And no double-digit point performances, nothing out there that makes you go, wow, he dominated the game. But you don't need that when you have David Duke and Nate Watson, guys right now that are in the top 5 in points per game in the conference. And Duke is starting to get some NBA draft hype after this one, which we'll have to talk about after. But that's what this team needs. You can work pretty well, and with guys as talented as Reeves and Gant, they're going to have a lot of games where they score more than just 7 points as well.
Man, you got me distracted with that. I hope David Duke doesn't leave after this year.
I saw.
Hurt.
Let me find the name of the guy. Fran Fraschilla. He's an NBA draft guy for ESPN. Tweeted after this game, not trying to tell anyone to do their job, but go ahead and put 6'5" junior guard David Duke in your 2021 mock NBA draft top 60. NBA athlete with size, speed, shooting, and feel. Big point guard. He's getting a little bit. And I saw Kyron Cartwright was tweeting about him and saying that he should be getting some draft hype. So this might be it for the Duke-Watson combo in Friartown. If it is, if it ends up being that, it's going to be because we get a lot more performances like the one we got tonight. And if that happens, we're going to have a pretty good season.
Well, regardless, the season is the last for the Duke-Watson combo because Watson's a senior and he's out of here. I guess he could use that eligibility thing that the NCAA put out, but
if he wanted to come back for an extra one,
he could get his master's. I wouldn't hate to see another Watson year. Imagine if he comes back.
That'd be a lot of fun. That would be a lot of fun. Man, this game has gotten me excited for the season for Providence. I know I had mentioned in the pregame show, my off the bench was how Providence played Texas last year, and that was the game that catapulted them and started their run. They didn't have the magic throwback jerseys tonight, but this feels like it could be that same type of performance where it's going to get things going in the right direction at the right time.
I agree, and I think this game comes at a very critical point for the Friars because in this abbreviated non-conference season, this is a very quick turnaround to conference play. Normally what happens is you'll see, I think it was the Friars took on Texas, was that the 21st of December last year? Mm-hmm. And then they did not play again until New Year's Eve. That is a very lengthy break between your non-conference and your conference schedule. I mean, you're looking at 2.5 days here. That's it. And not to mention, you got to fly home from Texas to Rhode Island before hosting Xavier. So they got to get home, they got to rest up, and then they got to get back in that beautiful Ruane Development Center and get to work because I get it, Xavier hasn't really played a high level of competition yet, but they're no cupcake. No one in the Big East is going to roll over for us. In fact, anyone in the Big East right now still wants to play the Friars because TCU, while this is a very good win, a road win for the Friars, TCU is projected ninth in their conference. So if you're the third team, if you're projected third in the Big East, you should be beating the crap out of TCU.
Yeah, and I think the score at the end of the game ended up being a little bit misleading. The Friars outplayed TCU by probably about 15 points and not 9, and it was tough at the end. But you're right. They're going to get a
I
good.
agree with that.
Friars are going to get a good Xavier team this weekend. We'll be talking about them in our next episode. But they're currently 6-0, playing Oklahoma basically while we record this. So by the time you're listening to it, you'll know the outcome of that game. They may be 6-1, they may be 7-0. Either way, this is going to be a good Xavier team that's coming into Providence. I'm going to bring it back. Last word on the Friars. Where do you think Nate Watson and David Duke end up finishing up this season when it comes to Big East rankings? You had Duke as a preseason first team, Watson as preseason second team. Are they staying at that level? Will Watson climb to the first team? Do you think either of these guys could even win Big East Player of the Year?
I think David Duke will climb the rankings and will be in conversation for Big East Player of the Year. I think realistically, if you're going to look at the polls and you're going to look at what the media is saying, right now it's a front-runner race between Marcus Zagorowski and Colin Gillespie. Zagorowski has the obvious lead here, but I think people kind of slept on David Duke. I think he will climb up and be in that conversation. And if Nate Watson keeps producing the way that he is, there is no doubt in my mind that he will be considered for first team All Big East. The reason I say considered is because they basically already gave it to Jeremiah Robinson Earl. So it'll be between Nate Watson and Sandro Mamukelashvili. Unfortunately, when Villanova has a player that scores over 10 points each year, they're automatically on first team All Big East. So it's up to the rest of the conference, the rest of the peasants, according to the media, that have to fill those spots, even if Nate Watson outperforms Jeremiah Robinson Earl when they play.
Well, these peasants are looking pretty mighty right now. David Duke, third in the conference in points per game behind Javon Blair and Aaron Thompson for Butler, who's only played one game. So 21 points per game, but that number does not mean a lot. As far as I'm concerned, Duke's really second in the conference. And then you've got Watson tied with James Bouknight right behind him, like a 1 point behind him, and that would be a tie for fourth if we're including Aaron Thompson at the top there. So these are, the Friars have not seen a 1-2 punch like these two guys since Ben Bentel and Chris Dunn. I know we've been saying it all year long. Watch out backboards around the Big East because Nate Watson's coming to break you.
Just backtracking a second, I saw a graphic today that Fox Sports put out on their social media of undefeated teams, and I saw Butler on there. I was like, they played one game.
Technically accurate, but that doesn't tell you anything.
I know, but the you can obviously see that the aim of the post is to create hype around the undefeated teams, and it's like Butler played one game like 2 weeks ago.
And they're not supposed to be undefeated. They're not supposed to be very good.
Right.
Honestly, when is Butler's next game projected to be? I think they're still shut down. So that's
I feel like everything keeps getting pushed back or canceled. This is a tough obstacle to navigate for a lot of different sports, but for college basketball specifically right now, I feel like everything's getting pushed back. You're seeing it with the NFL too, but
no game is a certainty. As of right now on the schedule, it's Xavier for the Friars on Saturday. After that, it will be UConn the following week, although UConn is shut down. So we will see with that. But I think this wraps up for Providence against TCU. I'm happy with this performance.
I'm happy with this performance. They looked like the team that we thought we were going to get. I think, shorter rotation works very well. Keep David Duke on the floor. Let Jared Bynum run the point. Get A.J. Reeves a few more shots. And, there's still a lot of stuff, a lot of fixing that needs to be done to this team. But, they're headed in the right direction. Not by all means, not a perfect performance, but a much improved performance.
Yeah, these are some very solid building blocks with a Big East schedule. poised to start in just a few days. For Joe Howie, I am Matt St. Jean. Friars at 4-2. Thank you for listening. Make sure you follow us wherever you are listening to this, and follow us on Twitter at The Flex Hoops. And as always,
4-2, go Friars.